Today we're talking about why we are going insane. By going insane, what should be understood is the rapid growth of mental disorders. We are talking about anxiety disorder, addictions, PTSD, bipolar disorder, personality disorders, and so on. You've probably noticed that suddenly everyone around you started suffering and going to psychotherapists, while those who do not go are the ones who do not have money, and they are, of course, the ones you feel sorriest for. Perhaps you thought all of this was just a trend and that depression does not exist, and then you had a panic attack and became a believer. If you have not had such an experience yet, do not be upset. I promise, it will happen in the very near future. Still, let us turn to statistics just in case this only seemed that way. According to the WHO, in 2025 at least 1 billion people, or every 8th inhabitant of the planet, lived with mental disorders. If we take only relatively developed countries, the figure is even higher. On average, slightly more than 20%, or every 5th person. The leaders are the United Kingdom and the Netherlands, where nearly every 3rd person has one mental disorder or another. Impressive, wouldn't you agree? But those are adults with their difficult lives. Let us look at children, who, in theory, are supposed to be happy and carefree. According to the same WHO data, 15% of adolescents live with mental disorders, and half of all mental disorders begin before the age of 18. At this point, especially advanced users, of whom there are a great many on this channel, might say, "Dimitri, but I know that in the past we simply had a poor understanding of what a mental disorder actually was. Besides, diagnostics were organised very badly, and any deviations were quite heavily stigmatised. For these reasons, there is no particular increase. It is simply that now people treat this more appropriately, and because we understand it better and deal with it systematically, we are seeing what we did not see before. If you are an advanced user, then know that you are partly right, but at the same time, the noticeable rise in mental disorders is a fact. This trend begins in the second half of the 20th century, and in the 21st century people speak of an even greater intensification, especially among children. We know this for certain from statistics on doctor visits, missed work days, maladaptive behaviour at school, cases of self-harm, suicide attempts, the consumption of special medications, and so on. There are enough parameters by which this can be tracked, and all of them indicate that the problem not only exists, but is worsening very rapidly. Today we will find out why this is happening. This episode is closely connected with the previous two, about why we are dying out and why we are so lonely. It is better to watch them and then come back, because first of all, the picture will be much more complete that way. Secondly, the extremely powerful conclusions we will draw at the end will concern all three topics at once. Subscribe everywhere, and let's begin. Social atomization. The first and most fundamental reason for our collective descent into madness is social atomization. We are primates, and primates are social animals. They are formed within cheerful and bloodthirsty groups where stable bonds, collective forms of life, a sense of belonging, and a known role for every member exist. They cannot function otherwise, because without the help of their fellow creatures, it is impossible to obtain food, build shelter, protect themselves from threats, and reproduce. As is now obvious, our communication with others is not limited merely to economic and biological needs. It is also fundamentally important psychologically. A person needs another person. Remember that phrase? If we look at our history, this was always the case. For hundreds of thousands of years we lived while interacting with one another every day in the closest possible ways across all possible dimensions. No other options were even assumed, and then they appeared. As we already noted in previous episodes, the turning point begins together with the Industrial Revolution, which is followed, quite logically, by active urbanization. A little more than 200 years pass from that point, during which the extended family disintegrates, education spreads, and the economy becomes fundamentally different. We find ourselves in 2026 and see the following. The number of our stable relationships is minimal and continues to decrease, if not every year, then certainly every 5 years. Collective forms of life, for example, celebrating holidays, gathering in the courtyard, going somewhere together, or playing something together with friends or family, all of this is rapidly becoming a thing of the past. Write about the last time you did something like this, or saw people you personally know doing it. Fewer and fewer people live this way. So how do more and more people live? Like this. Because of hyper-individualism, everyone thinks of themselves as a free and unique individual who builds their own life and answers to no one. Do these words resonate with you? You're such an individual, aren't you? From this comes psychological pressure caused by responsibility for everything that happens to you. You may refuse to admit it to yourself, you may even refuse to take responsibility, but of course that will only make things worse. Further, people increasingly live without a partner because a partner has to be searched for. That takes time, energy, and nerves. If one appears, it is usually temporary. If it lasts, people do not have children. And if they do have children, they do so comparatively late. Moreover, even if all of this works out, statistics are against them, and most likely they will divorce. There are enough reasons: financial instability, incompatible personalities, he turned out not to be the way I imagined him, and so on. Again, watch the previous episodes, everything is analysed there in detail. As a result, life without a partner is a blow to the psyche because you are lonely, but life with a partner is also a blow to the psyche because someone earns too little, does not want to share responsibilities, and is unbearable in everyday life. Many people ask the question, if this is probably how it will all end anyway, then why bother at all? Maybe I can manage on my own somehow. Yes, it is somewhat sad, but if you weigh everything carefully, this second option, with a so-called partner, somehow seems even worse, because the first option offers complete freedom and independence, and those are worth a great deal. Modern economics intensifies social atomization even further. Today a person can live their entire life effectively in a completely autonomous mode. The only thing required is a job with a stable income. If there is money, then absolutely all needs can be satisfied, because food, entertainment and domestic comfort with things like electricity, internet access and a washing machine are not all that expensive. Thus, literally everything in our reality is organised in such a way that we do not unite but instead separate ourselves from one another. We may have work, leisure, and many different kinds of contacts, but almost complete absence of stable emotional closeness, trust, and a sense of belonging, all of which are critically necessary for us. This destabilizes our mental health in the most serious way. Stress. The next reason is stress. Throughout most of our history, stress was short-term in nature. Some danger would appear, the nervous system would become activated, and afterward recovery would follow. Today the situation is fundamentally different. Stress has, in general, become permanent, while psychological tension has turned into the background against which we exist for years, if not decades. Why did this happen? Once again, we return to the city with its corresponding pace and way of life. First, the big city means constant competition in practically every sphere of life. We compete for work, status, money, attention, relationships, social recognition, and even for our own identity. Every day, a person sees a huge number of other people with whom they unconsciously begin comparing themselves. One must be equally effective and productive, equally successful and developed, while any pause or slowdown is seen as degradation. How do you think the psyche feels under such conditions? Second, there is the amount of information, which is growing exponentially. An endless flow of news, notifications, messages, images, videos, advertisements, sounds, and so on. All of this has to be watched, read, somehow reacted to, decisions must be made, so that, once again, under no circumstances do you fall behind everyone else. As a result, we are constantly twitching and never find peace. The situation is further aggravated by the erasure of the boundary between work and life. I have no doubt you have noticed this, if not in yourself, then in those around you. Previously, work and life were separated rather rigidly. They were two clearly distinct spaces. Today, work has imperceptibly replaced life itself. People literally live at work and continue living through it at home, because anyone can be reached either through a phone call, a chat, or an email, while not responding at all is extremely difficult. In the end, a person remains permanently trapped inside a system where something is always demanded and expected of them, and they cannot break free from it. People regularly come to my coaching sessions saying, yes, I have a respectable position. Yes, I earn this money. But at the same time, I understand that all of this is not good, because I effectively have no life, and I do not know what to do about it. If this is your case, then come as well. In coaching, we work with situations and states in which people usually say, "I'm confused." It can be anything. For example, "I want to scale up, but I still do not understand how," or "I want to leave Nike and I know I can, but something is stopping me," and so on. If lately everything has piled up at once, or you simply do not understand what to do, if you understand that you do not understand, then during the session we will sort everything out and untangle it. But now let us continue with our topic. Another source of chronic stress is the extreme instability and crisis-ridden nature of our era. One moment there is a new virus, then a war, then AI increasingly changing the labour market, then something else. Housing is increasingly becoming a luxury. Mortgage rates are extreme, and then what should one do? Where should one look for a so-called partner? Should one have children or not? And in that previous episode it was said that, and so on. All of this, of course, negatively affects our mental health. The destruction of the natural mode of life. The next major reason is the destruction of the natural mode of life. We are talking about our biology, specifically physiology. How did we live before? We moved constantly, spent a lot of time outdoors, and remained in continual contact with nature. Periods of activity and rest were fully predictable and stable, corresponding to the cycles of day and night. How do we live now? A huge number of modern people spend most of their time, first, sitting, and second, indoors. We move extremely little, and do not see rivers, forests, fields, or mountains. More and more people go to sleep after midnight and wake up after noon, and that is in the very best case if such an opportunity exists. Very often a person goes to bed after midnight but gets up at 8 or 9 in the morning, or even earlier because they have to go to work. The same applies to children who stay up late because of computers and phones while in the morning they have school or university, hence chronic sleep deprivation. All of these are, 100% and without any reservations, destructive processes for our body and psyche. Physical activity and sleeping at night are not optional. That is, they are not things we can choose at our own discretion. Movement and sleep after darkness falls are absolutely fundamental mechanisms of the normal regulation of our entire organism. They directly affect the functioning of the nervous system, anxiety levels, emotional stability, cognitive functions, and general mental condition. It really is that serious. If you systematically go to bed at 3 in the morning, wake up closer to 1 in the afternoon, do not walk at least 7,000 steps per day, do not go to the gym, stay at home all the time, and wonder why you constantly have a depressed mood, obsessive thoughts and panic attacks, then do not be surprised. Everything is exactly as it should be. With such a lifestyle, it cannot be otherwise. Digitalization. Finally, the last major reason for our mental problems is digitalization. As you may have noticed throughout this discussion, it appeared everywhere in one form or another, and that is no coincidence. The digital environment has become a new mode of our existence. It comes by default. It is a kind of basic setting of modernity. On the one hand, it has allowed us to reach an unprecedented level of comfort, information processing, and information transfer. But there is another side to it, which is the reason we gathered here. Today a person works, communicates, studies, satisfies themselves, and entertains themselves through a screen, while remaining permanently immersed in the already mentioned flow of endless push notifications, messages, and sound signals, because of which real contact with tangible and physically present people becomes increasingly rare. But this is only half the problem. There is a second half which is perhaps even more serious. Because of social media, a person becomes the object of constant evaluation. Every day we encounter countless images of other people's success, intelligence and attractiveness, unconsciously beginning to compare what we see with what we ourselves have. How many likes, reposts and comments do I have? If I have none, does that mean nobody is interested in me? Is that how it works? Do people find me attractive? Am I an interesting person? Can it be said that I have fulfilled myself? Questions of this sort are an extremely powerful source of anxiety. Today they constantly spin in our heads, giving us no peace and gradually undermining mental health. People of the past simply did not have such comparisons and the doubts connected to them in their minds, whereas we do, and therefore we suffer. Conclusions. So, what conclusion can be drawn from all of this? Over the past 250 years, our reality has transformed in the most radical way imaginable. Today we live in a manner humanity has never lived before. This is true literally for every aspect of our lives: work, education, goals, values, thinking in general. It is impossible to list everything. These radical changes were not neutral. They have both positive and negative consequences. The positive consequences are obvious and visible to everyone. The unconditional nature of human rights and freedoms, accessible medicine and education, personal housing, electricity and the internet, household appliances, the ability to exchange information instantly, travel quickly between countries and continents, build your life the way you want. All of this and much more has today become normal. We do not regard such things as extraordinary or accessible only to elites, or unattainable in principle, and rightly so. Of course, that is exactly how they should be regarded. However, that is not the whole picture. Our brilliant civilizational medal has another side. As was said above, today we truly live in a way humanity has never lived before, but in both senses, both good and bad. Our fantastic progress creates a special environment that is absolutely unnatural for us. We no longer spend time together, cannot find partners, and often no longer even try. We do not move, we sleep when we should be awake, and stay awake when we should sleep. We live in permanent stress and cannot calm down. We have stopped reproducing, which is not particularly characteristic of mammals. The most frightening part is that this is not somebody's conspiracy. Our modern life is organised this way because of entirely objective reasons, which we discussed in these 3 episodes. If this was somebody's malicious will, then everything could be fixed by installing new rulers, creating a new ideology, or introducing new processes, but unfortunately not. Everything is the way it is because it cannot be otherwise. The price of the development of civilization turned out to be our happiness. Next time we will talk about how to become happy despite everything.